අපිල් එලියා වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, in The Drink, animals in the Yala National Park left in dire straits from drying up watering holes due to official apathy.
The Wildlife Department needs to ensure that all these water bodies are filled. If their capacity does not permit them to fill all the water bodies, then permit outsiders like jeep drivers.
Not a time to rest. The WHO says the fight is not over as the Delta variant overtakes all other COVID-19 variants.
And I'm afraid it's far from over. It's not. The Delta variant seems to be outcompeting other variants that are circulating in other countries.
Getting back to normal. In a positive sign for Sri Lanka's tourism resumption dreams, Emirates Airlines resumes Colombo flights. Walk the talk. As the US evacuation deadline looms, the UNHRC calls on the Taliban to back up their assurances with action.
The onus is now fully on the Taliban united, and action by member states will be an important signal to the Taliban that a return to past practices will not find acceptance.
All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 25th of August 2021.
ඒ කියන්නේ ලයිෆ් බොයි අවස්ථා 10කදී ලෙඩ රෝග 10කට හේතු වන වෛරස් ඇතුළු විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරනවා කියලා.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. The US and the Taliban look to be heading for a showdown on the 31st of August if the evacuations of foreign nationals and Afghan citizens attempting to flee the Taliban takeover aren't completed by then. US President Joe Biden says, however, that the completion by the August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who the US military is transporting out. Meanwhile, United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet has called on the Taliban to back up their assurances of tolerance with concrete action and has also called on the international community to unite in action if they return to their past atrocities.
As the rush to evacuate civilians and diplomatic staff from Afghanistan's capital Kabul continues, the United States is coming under intense pressure to complete its pullout by the 31st of August. Previous indications by the US administration of a possible extension of the deadline, however, have been rebuffed by the Taliban, who say that any such extension will not be tolerated. Addressing the leaders of European countries yesterday, US President Joe Biden seemed to have heard the Taliban's message loud and clear when he says that the deadline seems achievable, but based on certain factors.
First, on evacuation, we agreed that we will continue to our close cooperation to get people out as efficiently and safely as possible. We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops, but the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who were transporting out and no disruptions to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary.
Meanwhile, following the Taliban's announcement, the group's spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid also announced that Afghan citizens will no longer be allowed to approach Kabul's Hamid Karzai International Airport to join the thousands of their fellow countrymen trying to flee. Further, in the backdrop of a mass exodus of the country's educated professionals, the Taliban spokesperson also urged doctors and academics not to leave the country and instead work in their own specialist areas, hinting at the real reason for the sudden ban. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet says that despite the repeated assurances by the Taliban that they intend to respect human rights, this must be backed up by action as well.
The Taliban has pledged to respect and protect human rights. Taliban spokespeople have made specific commitment to respect women's right to work and girls' right to attend school within the Taliban's interpretation of Islamic law. They have also said they will respect the rights of members of ethnic and religious minorities and refrain from reprisals against those who have worked with the government or the international community. The onus is now fully on the Taliban to translate this commitment into reality. In seizing effective control of much of the country, they must ensure in those areas ongoing respect for the international human rights commitment made by the state, as well as ensuring ongoing and indeed heightened provision of essential public services without discrimination to all. I strongly urge the Taliban to adopt norms of responsive governance and human rights and to work to re-establish social cohesion and reconciliation, including through respect for the rights of all who have suffered during the decades of conflict. United and unequivocal action by member states will be an important signal to the Taliban that a return to past practices will not find acceptance in the international community.
Wildlife at the Yala National Park have been left with little water to survive through a serious heat wave, with the drying up of water bodies within the park due to inadequate rain in the past 2 years. With no efforts from the Wildlife Department in sight, safari jeep drivers of Yala have come forward to help the animals by pumping water into the tanks. However, they have now been blocked by the Wildlife Department. Weighing in on the matter, conservationist Kitsiri Gunawardena says that irrespective of who takes the initiative, ensuring uninterrupted water supply to animals is of paramount importance, and that the prime responsibility lies with the park's custodian, the Wildlife Department. Several major water bodies located in the Yala National Park have now turned into mud pools as a result of insufficient rainfall in the southeast region of the country over the past 2 years. As a result, major tanks in the park such as Bhutava, Gonagala, Galluggala, Darshanavavu and Vilapalavavu were seen dried up. In addition, water levels of the Manik River, which flows through the Yala National Park, have seen a significant drop, contributing to the water scarcity within the park. That being the case, wildlife including elephants, birds and reptiles have been severely affected. On the 20th of this month, the Yalagama Jeep Drivers Association stepped forward to bring some respite to the animals with the assistance of the park rangers by pumping water into the watering holes in the park. However, the process has now come to a standstill as it was interrupted by the Wildlife Department, who have advised against the move. To seek clarification over the matter, First at 9 contacted Director General of the Department of Wildlife, Chandana Surya Bandara, who in a rather petulant manner brushed off the issue and refused to comment. Given the water scarcity within the Yala National Park and with temperatures ranging between 26 to 30 degrees Celsius, what will be the fate of the park residents? We spoke to conservationist Kitsiri Gunawardena on the matter.
Considering the climate change situation and also the fact that temperatures have been extremely high, which has led to most of the water sources inside the park drying up, it's extremely important that the man-made ponds that have been built inside the park are kept replenished to ensure that all animals from insects upwards are able to get this life-giving water. Because without water, most of the smaller animals initially will perish, and that could lead to the predators also to vanish. So therefore, it's extremely important to ensure that there is water available throughout the year, particularly during times of extreme drought. When the heat is very high, where there is evaporation even from their bodies, then they would need to drink even more. So the Wildlife Department, they are the custodians of the park, and it is their responsibility to ensure that all these water bodies are filled. If their capacity does not permit them to fill all the water bodies continuously, then it is not unnatural. It happens in other parts of the world to permit outsiders like jeep drivers or wildlife enthusiasts, the people who regularly visit national parks, to support under the guidance of the department to go and fill water. What is of paramount importance at this time is to ensure that these man-made water bodies are kept filled.
Emirates has announced the resumption of its Colombo-Malé services from next Wednesday in a bid to further support the tourism industries of both Sri Lanka and Maldives. The resumption is rather a part of the UAE flag carrier's plan to bolster services across its global network, prompted by the easing of international travel restrictions and an upsurge in passenger demand. Responding to the easing of international restrictions and an upsurge in passenger demand, the flag carrier of the UAE, Emirates, is now scaling up services with additional route resumptions and more flights across its global network. Following a months-long hiatus, Emirates has announced the resumption of its Colombo-Malé services from the 1st of next month. The resumption was announced by the airline yesterday, reaffirming its commitment to further support the tourism industries of Sri Lanka and Maldives. Emirates has also announced route restarts in other parts of its global network, including the resumption of flights to Newcastle and boosts to services across Europe. Compelled by a rise in customer demand, Emirates has also come up with a plan to introduce extra flights to over 10 European cities. Birmingham, Barcelona, Brussels, Dublin, Hamburg, London, Lisbon, Madrid, Munich, Rome and Zurich are some of those cities which will be served with daily flights or more. As international borders reopen and travel restrictions are eased, the airlines has resumed passenger services to over 120 destinations and has recovered close to 90% of its pre-pandemic network. An advisory board consisting of senior judicial figures has been appointed by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to make recommendations and guide him through future decisions pertaining to the investigation, release and granting of bail to prisoners and detainees held under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The board will be chaired by former Chief Justice Asoka De Silva, retired High Court Judge AAR Heyantoduwa and former Solicitor General Suhada Gamlat.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has appointed an advisory board to make recommendations and advise him on future decisions, including the investigation, release and granting of bail to prisoners and detainees held on terrorism charges under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The appointment of the board was made in terms of Section 13 of the Prevention of Terrorism Act No. 48 of 1979. Chaired by former Chief Justice Asoka De Silva, the advisory board will consist of retired High Court Judge AAR Heyantoduwa and former Solicitor General Suhada Gamlat. Commenting on the appointment of the board and its functions, Director General of Legal Affairs of the Presidential Secretariat, Harigupta Rohanadira, says that with the appointment of this advisory board, detainees will now have the opportunity to present their issues for a review by the board. Meanwhile, issuing a statement on the progress of the investigations into the Easter Sunday attacks today, IGP C.D. Vikramaratne revealed that a total of 311 suspects are currently in custody or under detention orders. The IGP also revealed that probes have been conducted into 100,000 phone conversations of the suspects. In addition, he also revealed that a total of 365 million rupees in cash and assets have been confiscated so far.
Big 3.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena says that 85.3% of the COVID-19 deceased in the country so far hadn't obtained a single dose of a vaccine. Meanwhile, addressing concerns of the Lambda variant, COVID-19 technical lead of the World Health Organization Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove says that the highly contagious Delta variant is capable of outcompeting any variant circulating in the world.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena confirmed that 190 COVID-19 deaths occurred in the island on the 23rd of August, bringing the total number to 7,750. The majority of the deaths so far, he revealed, were of people who weren't vaccinated.
From the total 7,750 deaths, 85.3% are not vaccinated. This is an alarming situation, and most of them are 60 and above. That's why we are requesting from all the elderly or 60 and above, whether you have comorbidities or not, get you vaccinated from the nearest vaccination center. Don't wait for a selection. Whatever the vaccine is available, please go and get your vaccination. And from 7,750, 1,142 deaths had only one dose of vaccination, that is about 14.7, and 198 deaths got both doses, but that is about 2.5 from we have given 18 million doses up to now. That shows that we can prevent unnecessary deaths after vaccination.
Meanwhile, the country at the moment is experiencing a rapid uptick in the number of daily COVID-19 infections, surpassing the 4,000 mark. Just yesterday, the daily caseload was 4,446, and the rise has been attributed to the highly transmissible Delta variant. With that being the case, the need for more public responsibility in maintaining safety protocols has never been more urgent, says the World Health Organization's COVID-19 technical lead, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, who also took the opportunity to remind the public that the threat is far from over.
I think from a public point of view, any SARS-CoV-2 virus that is circulating in your area, you should treat as a dangerous virus, regardless of what it is. But also know that you have some control over your exposure to that virus, whether it's Delta or whether it's another variant that may emerge. We are working with scientists around the world to track these mutations. And there are several sublineages of Delta that we are looking at because the virus will continue to evolve. Unfortunately, the Delta variant will be the last variant you'll hear us talk about. But know that there are things that we can do to minimize its spread. This is about what we do at an individual level measure, what we do in communities. We stay home if we can work from home, but many people can't do that. So if we can stay home, for those who have to go out and do their work, it puts less pressure on them. There are less people on public transportation. We have to continue to wear our mask, avoid those crowded spaces. Some people feel that this pandemic is over, and some people are acting like this pandemic is over. And I'm afraid it's far from over. It's not. So keep it up. Keep doing these individual level measures. I mean, a lot of it is a bit of an inconvenience, but it's what you can do to save your life and save the life of a loved one.
In the meantime, the number of COVID-19 infections in the country surpassed the 400,000 mark this afternoon, with the addition of 4,484 cases detected between the 20th to the 23rd of August that had allegedly been left out of the official figures due to a reporting delay. Further, with 3,390 cases being confirmed so far during the day, the total number of infections in the country rose to 406,675, leaving the country's number of active cases at 49,995. In addition, there were also 2,163 patients discharged from hospitals and treatment centers during the day, which brought the country's total recoveries to 348,930. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has also addressed the Lambda variant that has been detected in some countries and which still remains a variant of interest. However, the WHO's Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove says that the evidence so far proves that the Delta variant looks to be outcompeting any other variants in the world.
There are certain characteristics of this variant that make it of interest for us in terms of potential for increased transmissibility. So we're tracking it and sort of understanding what is happening in terms of its circulation. We are dependent on our understanding of Lambda based on surveillance activities, sequencing, and the sharing of those sequences to public platforms like GISAID. This variant of interest has been reported in more than 40 countries, but in most of the reportings, it's only a few cases that have been reported with the Lambda variant. And our understanding of it is that in countries that did have a lot of Lambda circulation, that if the Delta variant is present, that the Delta variant overtakes it, meaning that the Lambda variant prevalence is declining and Delta is increasing. The Delta variant seems to be outcompeting other variants that are circulating in other countries.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena urged the public not to hold illegal public gatherings during the curfew period, as the consequences could be dire for the country. In the meantime, the economic centres of the country are scheduled to reopen again over the weekend to ensure the supply of essential food items.
A quarantine curfew was imposed by the government for 10 days following a request made by the health authorities to reduce the daily caseload of COVID-19 infections. With that being the case, the public also bears a large share of the responsibility to restrict their movements and avoid illegal gatherings.
Be at your home with your own family. Don't go and have parties with other neighbors during this restriction period, because it is no point. If you are going to do such activities, then it will again lead into another spread. Give your 100% contribution to this quarantine curfew and the restrictions. It will definitely give results in 2 weeks' time.
Meanwhile, during the last 24 hours that ended at 6 a.m. this morning, a total of 705 people have been arrested for violating quarantine rules and regulations. In the meantime, 3 suspects were arrested by the police yesterday for selling fake curfew passes. The suspects, who are residents of Vanathamulla, Kesselwatta and Barber Street, sold the fake curfew passes for between 3,000 to 5,000 rupees. In addition, 12 fake essential service passes, a scanner and a printer were also taken into custody as well. Meanwhile, in other news, dedicated economic centres located island-wide remained open during the day for wholesale trade. According to State Minister of Advanced Technological Agriculture Shashindra Rajapaksa, the economic centres will reopen again on the 28th and 29th of August after their closure today.
The People's Liberation Army of China donates 300,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines to Sri Lanka Army in order to strengthen the country's vaccination drive. Meanwhile, as vaccinations of people aged above 30 years are about to end, the country's top health official is hopeful that they can also begin the vaccinations of those between 18 to 30 years of age and complete them by mid-October.
The government's vaccination drive is currently in full swing, targeting people aged over 30. By last evening, 161,650 people have been inoculated, out of which 19,737 have been given their first doses. The balance 141,913 people have received their second doses. This brings the total number of first doses administered in the country by last evening to 12,149,634. This amounts to 56% of the total population of the country. Of this number, 5,949,431 people have received both vaccine doses, amounting to 26% of the population.
Once we finish 30 and above population, we are going to start the vaccination from 18 to 30 age group. Our hoping to finish that age group also at least first week or mid-October. Then our 18 and above population will be fully covered and we can expect the results after the 2 weeks' time.
Meanwhile, as mobile vaccinations are underway targeting the elderly, Dr. Asira Gunawardena requested the public to take full advantage of this program and get their family members vaccinated.
Please use this opportunity to get vaccinated yourself. It's not a forceful vaccination or anything. If you are voluntary, only that we are going to give vaccination. This will be done by the respective MOH and their teams as well as by the Tri-Forces in some areas. Please contact your area MOH or the PHI or the Grama Sevak or other officers and get the information.
Meanwhile, questions have been raised by members of the public about whether they can get their second doses at a different centre from the one they received their first doses from.
අපි හැම වෙලේම උනන්දු කරනවා පළවෙනි එන්නත ලබාගත් ස්ථානයේදීම දෙවෙනි එන්නතත් ලබා ගන්න කියලා. ඒකට එක හේතුවක් තමයි ඒ ලියකියවිලි ක්‍රොස් මැච් කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන් හැකියාව. නමුත් වෙනම ස්ථානයකට ගියා වුණත් ඔහුගේ එන්නත් පත්‍රිකාව අරගෙන ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා නම් දෙවෙනි එන්නත ලබා දීමේ පහසුව දැන් ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒකට අර ඔන්ලයින් පහසුකම තියෙන එන්නත් මධ්‍යස්ථානයක් නම් ඔවුන්ට ඒක චෙක් කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන් පළවෙනි ඩෝස් එක කොහෙන්ද අරන් තියෙන්නේ මේක හරි පුද්ගලයාද කියන එක බලන්නට පුළුවන්.
Meanwhile, China has once again come forward to assist Sri Lanka to strengthen its vaccination drive with a donation of 300,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from the People's Liberation Army to the Sri Lankan military. The vaccines are scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka on the 28th of August.
The Department of Meteorology says that the southwest monsoon has strengthened over the low levels of the atmosphere, which will result in showers enhancing over the island over the next few days. The Department of Meteorology says that showery conditions over the southwestern part of the island are likely to enhance during the next few days. It added that showers are expected to occur at times in the western, Sabaragamuwa and central provinces and in the Galle and Mathura districts. Further, fairly heavy showers above 75 millimeters can be experienced in some areas of the Sabaragamuwa province and in the Kalutara, Galle, Mathura, Kandy and Nuwara districts as well. Meanwhile, showers will occur at several places in the sea areas extending from Puttalam to Hambantota via Colombo and Galle, while showers or thunder showers may occur at a few places in the sea areas extending from Kankasanthurei to Pothuwil via Trincomalee in the evening or night. Further southwesterly winds will be experienced in sea areas around the island with speeds of around 25 to 35 kilometers per hour, with the possibility of increasing up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour at times in the sea areas extending from Mathura to Patiklo via Hambantota and Pothuwil and from Puttalam to Mullaitivu via Mana and Kankasanthurei. In the meantime, the sea areas extending from Mathura to Batiklo via Hambantota and Pothuwil and from Puttalam to Mullaitivu via Mana and Kankasanthurei will be fairly rough at times.
Southwest monsoon flow has strengthened, especially at the low levels of the atmosphere. So, showery conditions over southwestern part is likely to enhance during next few days. We expect showers at times in western, Sabaragamuwa, central, north and north central provinces as well as in Gol and Matara districts. A fairly heavy force about 75 millimeter also likely at some places in Sabaragamuwa provinces and Kalutara, Gol, Matara, Kandy and Nuwara districts. In addition to that, strong gusty winds also can be expected over western slopes of the central hills, northern, north central, northwestern provinces and in Gol and Matara. So these showery conditions are likely to continue next couple of days.
Welcome back in business news. The central bank has placed a cap on the interest rate of foreign currency deposits of 5%, which it hopes will reduce the gap between rupee and the dollar yields. The order was issued under Section 104, Part 1 of the Monetary Law Act, number 58 of 1949. A circular issued in this regard says that maximum interest rates that may be offered or paid by a licensed commercial bank and the National Savings Bank on all foreign currency deposits shall not exceed an annual effective rate of up to 5%. It adds that under the Act, the Monetary Board may from time to time fix the maximum rates of interest which licensed commercial banks may pay upon various classes of deposits. Headline inflation increased to 6.8% in July this year from 6.1% in June. As per the central bank, this was driven by the monthly increases of prices of items in both food and non-food categories. Food inflation has increased to 11% in July 2021 from 9.8% in June, and non-food inflation increased to 3.2% in July from 2.9% in June 2021. The National Consumer Price Index measured on an annual average basis has remained unchanged at 5.4% in July. The monthly change of NCPI recorded at 0.63% in July due to increases observed in prices of items in both food and non-food categories. Moreover, monthly changes of food and non-food categories recorded at 0.37% rather and 0.27% respectively. Within the food category, prices of sugar, vegetables, dried fish and fresh fish increased, whereas prices of coconut and coconut oil recorded decreases. Further, prices of items in the non-food category recorded an increase mainly due to price increases observed in the transport and restaurant and hotel subcategories during the month. Further, year-on-year co-inflation increased to 4.4% in July this year from 4.1% in June, while annual average co-inflation remained unchanged at 4.4% in July 2021. Sri Lankan stocks closed at their highest level in almost 7 months today, boosted by strong gains in the financial sector. The CSE All Share Price Index rose 1.2% to 8,756.67 points, while the S&P SL Index of more liquid stocks gained 8.3 points to close at 3,183.73. With that, here's Dimantha Matthew with today's stock market report.
Today was another high turnover day with heavy retail participation. However, the market movement seems to be a bit volatile during the day. So we saw very high market movement days over the last couple of days where there was a significant surge in the index. And today also the market started off in a similar pattern as there was a sizable movement in the index similar to the last 2 days, where we saw intraday high of 276 point gain towards midday. However, then we saw some significant profit taking and selling pressure coming on a continuous basis to the index, as the index initially wiped off all the gains during the day, and then afterwards there was some stabilization there, and then we saw again another upward movement, but the volatility continued from there on. Ups and downs continued during the day.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Have a good night.